Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Happiness Show, which is a show all about passion, purpose, and creating happiness in your life and in the lives of others. And I'm very privileged and excited today to welcome Rachel Nyaradzo Adams. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So Rachel is a leadership practitioner and helps leaders and their teams reach peak performance across Africa and the world. So Rachel, very exciting to have you on the show and to share this wonderful niche that you're in.
Thank you. I'm excited to share some of my insights with you, my experiences too.
Definitely. So let's start off from the beginning. So how did you get into the field that you're in now? And I'd love to hear your journey of how you found your passion to do what you do now.
I think I've been in this field my entire life, actually, quite honestly.
Wow.
Ever since I was a child, I was fascinated by human behavior. I was always fascinated by choice. So what choices do people make and what do those choices create in their lives? I mean, I was observing my own environment. I was observing the environments of families and friends. And I just was always asking very tough questions, you know, like, why have people ended up this way? Why are people unhappy? Why is it that we are so attached to the status quo? I mean, my language wasn't as sophisticated then.
I'm sure it probably was.
I'm not too sure. But I truly was fascinated by human behavior and human dynamics. And so had been spending a lot of time, I always say as a child, in front of the mirror, giving speeches about what I was observing. So I would be in the city center. I remember I grew up in Gweru, and I'd be in the city center with my mom or with my siblings, and I'd see beggars on the street, and I'd think, why are they on the street? Why are they begging? How do they come to a place where they're so disenfranchised or whatever it is? And literally I would go home and start to give a speech in the mirror, and I'd be like, beggars, why are beggars on the street, and what are we doing about it? And what is the state of leadership, and what are leaders doing about this? And so I've always been like that. And by the time I got to university, when I was looking for what I was going to major in, I had the opportunity to sort of have a taster of different courses because my degree allowed me to do that. I was taking a double major at the University of Cape Town. And I walked into an anthropology class. I mean, I saw it in the curriculum, in the sort of the list of courses available to humanities, and I was like, what is this anthropology? I've never heard of it. And I walked into the class, and my life literally was changed because I had so many questions and not very many answers. And I didn't feel like I had access to the answers. And then I walked into this class, and it just all began
up for you.
Absolutely.
Oh, what an incredible journey. And I love how you mentioned there, as a young child, I was fascinated by human behavior, which is really important to me when people ask me these questions. How do I find my passion? I always ask them, tell me what you were curious about as a child. Tell me what you did as a child. What are the correlations that are happening from your childhood up until now? Because people forget to look at that.
Absolutely.
So it's really lovely that you have that experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting, in my coaching work, very similar to what you're saying, I come across a lot of people who struggle to say, you know, what is my strength? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? And I similar to you, would say, you actually know, you've always known. The problem is that life happens and all these voices come in. And so, you know, if you're from a country like ours, if you're from Zimbabwe, in fact, you know, I've done work in many African countries, and you hear this across Africa as well, right? You're sort of pushed and pressured into medicine or law or accounting, engineering, especially now with the STEM movement. And when people get into a flow that is actually not theirs, before you know it, they've forgotten what their own flow is. And so I always say to people, you know, you just need the courage to admit that you know. That's all that it is. We've always known.
This is what I was actually saying on my webinar this morning, was the problem is the fear and the doubt. And the mindset that it's okay to take a step into the unknown and away from what we traditionally have been channeled into.
Absolutely.
But that is where happiness lies, or passion lies, because it's our thing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So really fascinating. So then how did you go from University of Cape Town into leadership, specifically in Zimbabwe?
So my leadership journey started with the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship. So I was at the University of Cape Town, and I've actually reached the point, I was paying my own fees and my mom was helping me, and she helped me substantially. And I'd reached a point where I actually think I couldn't continue because I didn't have any more money, and we didn't have any more money, and I was really thinking I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be in debt, I don't want to take, I don't like taking loans for things. So I just remember thinking, well, maybe after my undergraduate degree, this is it, I'm going to just have to stop here. But you know, I was doing anthropology, I was excelling because I was doing something that I was good at and I was passionate about, and I was excelling, absolutely. Yeah. And so I got a scholarship, Mellon May scholarships, an American scholarship, and once I'd gotten that scholarship, it opened up doors to other scholarships as well. So literally, you know, when I was thinking I'm at my wit's end and I'm probably going to have to drop out of school or something, I'm not too sure, I literally got this email when I'd come back from the vacation, I think it was the December vacation or something. I got a letter in my pigeonhole in my residence at university saying, congratulations, you've been nominated for the Mellon May Scholarship. And I was like, who nominated me? But you know, they just looked at who was on the Dean's Merit list in the humanities space largely, and then, well, actually it was in the research-based subjects, and then they invited you to apply. And literally I applied for the scholarship and I got it, and then it just opened doors for other scholarships. But the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship was a really seminal scholarship for me because when we first got onto the scholarship, I never forget, and she's remained somebody who's so pivotal in her life, a woman named Rejoice Ngongo. And Rejoice is a coach, and she was the program director at the time of the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship. And when we on our first day, when we had received the scholarship and we're now official scholars, she had lit a candle, and she gave us all candles, and she said, I'm going to pass this candle around, light this candle only if you're committed to being the change that Africa needs. So let it pass by you if you're not interested, but if you are interested in changing the continent, light your candle. And I remember, literally, I was so teary-eyed, and I was so moved, and it was this heat in my body, because I'm going, this is the first time someone has ever given me permission to lead. Someone has said it out to me loud, right? So I always imagined it in my head. I always imagined I wanted to make a difference, but I didn't know how. And I didn't feel like I was in the right communities. I didn't have the right tools. You know, it was all very sort of out there, outlandish for me. And I was given permission for the first time, and that changed my life, because I thought, so that's all it is. Somebody needs to give you permission to lead. Somebody needs to say to you, go ahead and do it. You know, some of us can do it for ourselves, but some people need to be pushed and need to be encouraged.
And I take that one step.
Exactly. And I remember thinking, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to help people get to their leadership.
I think that's so amazing, because that's the difference between doing a job that you're okay at, that's all right and pays the bills, versus something you're passionate about. It's like you felt it. It was like a fire inside you, and you said, this is what I'm going to do. It was like so certain, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd never been more certain of anything. Now, of course, certainty doesn't necessarily mean that fear also doesn't coexist within that space,
does,
right?
Yeah.
I remember thinking, oh, this is a big challenge. What does it mean? How am I going to do it? At that point, you know, I wasn't clear. But I was clear that I wanted to help people get into that mindset that I've gotten to, that says, wait a minute, we're not victims of a space. We can actually infuse ourselves into an environment and change it. That's what she just said. She just said to me, light the candle if you're committed to this. It's not a question of, is it possible? The question is, are you committed?
What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do? And I just thought, I want to feel this alive every day of my life. I want to feel like I have an opportunity to infuse myself into a situation and change it. And from then on, after UCT, I went to Oxford, and I did my master's in African studies, and to the point of Rejoice being pivotal to my life, she then called me after I finished my master's. She said, what are you planning on doing? And I said, I'm actually in the process of looking for work. I don't know what to call the work I want to do, but I want to work with people. I want to do similar to what you do, right? That's what I want to do. And she says, well, the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation is looking for program officers to do leadership and entrepreneurial development for university students. Would you be interested? I said, it sounds like it's right up my lane.
Yeah.
And that's how my career started.
Oh, incredible. So I'm a firm believer of you create your life and your reality, and also that you're given opportunities and inspiration throughout your life, and if you take those, they will lead you down the right path. And like Rejoice being this pivotal part is you used her as a mentor, and she was your inspiration, and she helped you, and and it's really important that we surround ourselves with those people that help us be better and be greater than we are. So she was one of those people. So it's I think it's a good thing to note for everyone watching is who's that person for you? Who's your mentor? Who's your inspiration that's going to help you get to where you want to go?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you know, I often say you don't have to go through life opening doors for yourself. Other people can do it for you too.
That's so lovely.
And she did exactly that, because I wouldn't have known how to open that door specifically, but you know, she had connections, she knew people, and she knew I was passionate about it, and she knew that I could be good at this stuff because she had coached me very closely, so she knew what my heartbeat was. And
I love that. You don't have to open your own doors, other people can do it for you. Really, really profound.
Yeah.
Great. So Rachel, what about your purpose? So what is your purpose now for your life and your business and Zimbabwe or Africa?
You know, so you know, we all have these defining moments, and my last role in my professional career was at Yale University, and I was heading up what was called the Africa Initiative. So I basically worked to build connections between the university and African institutions in the private and the public sector, and I was also raising money in the millions for the university's Africa projects, etc. You know, so it was a very comfortable job in terms of, you know, you kind of feel like I've reached the peak of my career. I was flying business class everywhere and meeting very important people and being in the room with very important subject matter and conferences and really, you know, and at Yale.
What more could you wish for, right?
Right. And I remember a moment where I kind of started to feel this sense of relief that, oh, it's so nice that I can get out the door and go to the market and, you know, get these really fancy foods and organic foods. I have lots of allergies, so being able to find the kinds of foods that I needed to eat. And, you know, I can find coconut oil for my hair easily, and if I get sick, I'm going to call 911. I know the ambulance is going to be here in 5 minutes. I can call the police and hopefully they won't shoot me, but I can call the police and you know, hopefully in a normal circumstance get the help that I need, right? So there were all these comforts of the Western world, of the first world, and I just remember thinking, this is fantastic. Then I remember distinctly having a feeling of just a drop in my stomach, because I remember thinking, but lots of people back home don't have this. Lots of people at home don't have that assurance. They could get a mild cough that could turn into something bigger, and they could die because there are no medications available. I mean, just now we saw Harare Hospital can't do any more surgeries because there isn't enough medication for the surgeries. And you just think to yourself, and I just remember thinking, I literally remember thinking, this is wrong. I shouldn't be here.
Wow. And that's quite a, I guess, a difficult space for you, because on one hand you'd like all of those comforts and they make you feel safe and secure, but then on the other hand you're told. So it's a big decision.
It's very jarring. It's actually making me teary-eyed, I'm not too sure. I just felt that my best years were going to countries that were not in the dire straits situation that my country was in. And that, you know, I had an entire continent, like I was saying to you earlier when we were chatting, that where people kept saying, Africa has this crisis of leadership, and Africa has this crisis of leadership. And here I was calling myself a leadership expert and wasn't really engaging as deeply as I could have in these issues. I mean, I'd already been doing leadership development my entire career, like I've just said, right? But it just felt to me like I could be doing so much more. I could be touching so many more people and shifting their mindsets and getting them equipped with the tools that they need. And I remember just thinking, this is wrong. You shouldn't be here. It's fantastic for you. It's fantastic for you, and you could live here for the rest of your life, and you could be happy, and you know, you could be on world platforms, and And I remember when I was having these thoughts that I'd just come from speaking at the United Nations. I'd been there on a panel on youth development in Africa. And I just felt like, it just felt to me morally questionable that I had this gift and I could be giving it to people on the continent and I wasn't. And literally when that happened, and that's in a number of other defining moments, a number of other things that happened, I decided I was going to pack my bags and come back.
Wow. Big decision.
Yeah, after 15 years. I'd been away for 15 years. It was a big decision. And people said, are you mad? Because initially people thought I was just going to go back to South Africa because I had been working there for some time. And I said, no, I'm going to go back to Zimbabwe. Like, have you lost your mind? What is wrong with you? And I just knew.
But I guess that decision came from a place of being purpose-driven. And it wasn't from a space of, I miss home, I miss my family, it was like, my purpose is to make a difference and to use my gift to make my country and Africa better through leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like Santiago, the alchemist, right? When he wakes up and he knows he should go to the pyramids. Doesn't have a clue how he's going to get to the pyramids.
But he just knows.
And certainly a shepherd boy doesn't go to the pyramids. But I just knew that this is right now where I was. It's what I needed to do. And I just had to trust that I would figure it out.
Yeah.
And that the universe would help me figure it out. And truly that's what's happened.
So how long have you been in Zim now?
I've been back a year and 4 months, 5 months maybe.
So still quite fresh.
Very fresh.
Fresh and new.
Fresh off the boat.
And how are you finding being here and using your gift and your message?
So I found it incredibly fulfilling because when you're doing the kind of work that I do and you're aware of the kind of impact that I can have in a space like this, and I have leaders who I work with, whether they're CEOs of companies, whether they're chairmen of companies, whether they are high school students who come to me and say, this thing that you've just told me, or this tool that you've just given me, has revolutionized the way I think. It has truly helped me to see all of the possibilities available to me. It's when I remember coaching one student, for example, whose mom was pressuring her to go and do law at university. And she was like, I'm a humanities person, but I'm not a law person. And I know I'm not a law person, but my mom thinks it's more prestigious. And we had this conversation.
About that though, yeah.
Exactly. And I gave her tools to talk to your mother. I said, these are the things you need to say to your mom. These are the examples you need to give her. Because moms are just concerned that you're not going to be able to make anything out of your life. And she had that conversation, and later on her mom wrote to me and thanked me.
Oh, amazing.
And I was like, oh, that usually you're worried that the parents are going to pick up, like, who's this Rachel that's speaking this nonsense into your head? And literally her mom wrote to me and says she's gone to university, and just like you, she's going to go do anthropology. She's going to do anthropology and journalism, I think it was. And thank you.
And what a good feeling for you, knowing you empowered the child as well as helped the parents.
Absolutely.
Make their decisions with their children.
Yeah. You live for moments like that. And it's when a CEO comes to you and says, my teams are so much better since you worked with us, because we now have the tools to understand each other better. We have the soft skills to be able to do the 50% of work that isn't strategy. So McKinsey, who's one of my previous employers, has been doing extensive work on soft skills and why they matter, organizational health and why it matters. And they did this research showing that if you focus on the health of the organization as much as you focus on the strategy, you're 2.5 times more likely to be competitive than the people who are in the same space that you're in, your competitors. And who just focus on strategy, right? And you're 3 times more likely to be successful than companies that just focus on health. And so there's actually a quantitative value to this, right? This is the bottom line issue.
That's incredible.
Absolutely. So giving people those soft skills, giving teams those skills to say, how do you do feedback effectively? How do you coach each other and mentor each other effectively? How do you understand your different personality types and those dynamics and how they work out? How do you problem solve in a way that speaks to people's strengths? I mean, it's usually the stuff that corporates don't do because it's like it's mushy, it's not
Yeah.
measurable.
And they can't see the value
Exactly.
immediately.
Exactly. And so when people come back and they say, you know, conflict averted, we're finding that people are getting along better, they're having real conversations. That's what you want. That's what you want. Yeah.
And I think it's so nice for you to know that you're not only making a difference like from the top, but it filters through the entire organization and to the person, the receptionist at the front desk feels confident and happier and that they feel valued. And I think that's so important to have a holistic approach. Hey?
I mean, I wish more companies would open up their budget so you can do this work across the spectrum. So I was so impressed by one NGO I worked with here in Zimbabwe. I was so impressed because literally, Tamlin, I kid you not, I did leadership training for them all the way from the top of the organization, all the way to their cleaners and their security guards.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah. And the security guard training and the cleaning training wasn't like a grooming training.
No.
Let's teach you how to speak eloquently.
Yeah.
It was leadership training. It was hardcore leadership principles. With the security guards, with the cleaners, with the program officers, with the director of the program. And that for me was an organization that was serious because it doesn't matter what position their people are in.
It's still a person.
If they're people who hold powerful dreams and visions within them.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out as a manager, as a director, as a CEO how to unleash the best of those people, your organization can only benefit, can only thrive from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wish more organizations would do that because the truth of the matter is, particularly in Africa, a lot of training sort of sits at the top. So there's a disproportionate amount of leadership training that goes to executives and not enough to managers. And Africa's problem is in middle management. That's our problem.
And yet there's no funds to fix that.
Exactly. Yeah. There isn't a budget usually in an organization. There isn't enough of it.
So maybe that's what your vlog should be about.
Probably. Probably. Absolutely.
What's missing? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
The missing middle.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So making amazing difference throughout Zim and Africa.
Yeah.
So incredible purpose there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Rachel, now, what makes you happy, and what do you do to create happiness in your life? Because I guess you've come from the first world and had all these comforts, and then come to Zim and where there's trials and tribulations, and so how do you manage that? This is a huge question I get asked all the time. Is how am I supposed to be happy when there's this environment around me? So how do you do that?
So a number of things. You have to have your own standard. You have to be clear about what your own standard of living is. And you have to fight to maintain it. Right? Now that sounds like an oxymoron, especially given that people are saying, but there aren't enough resources and, but you have to fight for that. Because if you lose that, there's nothing else.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. So if the system around you is rotting and you allow yourself to rot with it,
there's only one way to go, and that's down.
absolutely. Yeah. Because it's a mindset thing, and if you get your mindset into the gutters, it's going to stay there, quite frankly. So, and it's going to be hard to pull yourself out. So I'll give you an example. I mean, when I moved back, I was looking for an apartment, right? And at the time, my sister and my brother-in-law had been very kind to let me live with them for some time while I was trying to find this apartment. It took me 7 months to find an apartment in Zimbabwe because I kept walking into these spaces and I refused to accept that standard. It's like, I don't have a lot of money. Let's be clear, I'm a startup, and so all my money is going to making this business work. So I'm not making any money at the moment. I'm losing money, if anything, right now. But I refuse to live in this dump that you just showed me. But what I noticed is that agencies and landlords alike had sort of decided that, well, it's hard in the country, so our standards are just going to drop. And I'm like, no, that's unacceptable. I say the same example with my cab drivers. I don't drive. I've made a decision not to drive. I'm not interested. Because because I feel like I'll cause an accident. I'm not very good at multitasking and driving. Just
Good for you.
Yeah. So I'm clear that it's not my strength, and I like to say, cab drivers is what they're good at. Let them take me around. But every cab I've got into, I've got 2 or 3 that I use regularly, but every single cab I get into, if your car seats are dirty, I am going to give you a speech. I'm like, you qualify, you know, like how Oprah gave away cars. I'm like, I'm giving speeches. You qualify for a lecture on how you're doing your business wrong. Because if your job is to offer me a service of getting me from point A to B and getting me there in comfort, you're doing this all wrong, right? So you walk into these cabs and the seats are, I mean, there's splodges and all sorts of things. And literally, you know, people would say to me, oh, but people can't afford it. I'm like, that's a lie. You can afford it.
It's an excuse.
It's an excuse. We get into this pity party that says, woe is me, I'm suffering, and yet I'm going to meet you at the pub drinking on the weekend. Don't lie now. You've got those resources. And literally, every single cab driver that I've spoken to about this will phone me the next day and be like, sister, I've now got new car seats, will you use me? And truly, I stay committed to those guys. I will continue to use them because they've taken the feedback and they've run with it. So you have to keep a standard and make sure you don't rot.
But yeah, Rachel, what else makes you happy?
So for me, the last thing that makes me happy is really paying close attention to the results of my work. So being clear the impact that I'm having on the people that I'm serving, because I really do think of my work as a service to other human beings. And I love Ben Zander wrote a book called The Art of Possibility, and he said one of the things that are important to really pay attention to when you're leading other human beings is to look for the sparkle in their eye. Is your presence in their lives creating a sparkle? Because if it isn't, you're not bringing out the best in them. And so I live for those moments when a person says, you know, when I entered your space and you gave me whatever you gave me, the insight, the wisdom, the tool, it completely changed the way I see the world, and it allows me to go forward in all of my possibilities. And I think that's important. And I think it's also important, by the way, in terms of improving what we offer to people, because feedback is so important.
Totally.
Right? So you want to listen to what people are saying back to you about, you know, you could have done this better, or this was a little bit confusing for me. And you want to be able to take that as a gift. Because the only way we grow is by gifting each other with honest feedback. And I often say, by the way, in terms of leadership challenges, that's one of our problems on the continent, is I find, like, let me speak for Zimbabwe specifically, we're a very polite culture. So we don't tell each other the truth. We don't give each other honest feedback. You know, if you're in a particular hierarchical position, I can't tell you the truth. You know, if you're the manager, I can't tell you the truth. I can't possibly tell you that. And I think it's really feedback. You know, we always used to say in my old company, feedback is a gift. It's a gift. Take it.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's accepting that gift without a kind of egocentric mind. So it's more like being humble and saying, okay, I appreciate taking that learning, because a lot of the time we get defensive and so we don't actually take the lesson, which is where the magic is.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what I've always said about feedback? When people have given me really hard feedback, I've found that what is really happening, so it's not about me, it's about them, right? Because what's happening for them is they're going, you're about to change my mind about something I've held powerfully for a very long time. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding you clearly so that I can actually change my mind. So that's a beautiful thing, right? It means that people are sort of finding themselves about to move and they just want to be clear. So, you know, they'll ask, but Rachel, what does that mean? But Rachel, can you expand on that? Okay, this is an interesting perspective. I don't know if I agree with you. Tell me more.
And that's a good thing.
It's a good thing, because the signal you should get from that is I'm being effective in almost changing this person's mind about something. So, you know, just last week I was in a workshop where I was saying to people, we often use this term a lot, somebody hurt me. I'm like, that's not possible. Nobody has the capacity to hurt you.
You gave them the power to hurt you.
And also, what is an emotion? An emotion is a psychophysiological response to a thought. So the thing that has hurt you is the thought that you had about what the person did. So I gave an example and I said, think about it. You're in a relationship with somebody, you've been with them for 2 years, they cheat on you. Okay. The thought that you have about what they've done is what will hurt you. So, was I not good enough for them? Was I not slender enough for them? Was I not, you know, masculine enough for them? Did I not give them something that they needed? That thought is what will create the feelings of hurt. If you had a different thought that says, this is their business.
Yeah.
I don't know what hurt is going on in their life that causes them to be this disruptive. But I am going to be forgiving, and I'm going to be kind. I'm going to try and understand them.
Learn and take responsibility.
And learn and make a decision about whether I stay or go. That creates different sets of emotions. Definitely. The first thought creates hurt, it creates frustration, dismay, trauma. The second response creates ambition, acceptance, and ability to move on. And so, if, for example, I introduce that thought into a room and say, nobody can hurt you.
They don't like that,
people kind of go, ooh, I want to be able to say somebody hurt me, right? So they want to know, is this worth changing my mind for? So give them that room to ask you the tough questions. Take it as good feedback. So do the work of improving how you express it. Improve on how you elaborate on the points that people can really benefit from the work.
So how do you do that? How do you improve on yourself, and how do you make yourself better? Obviously you've got amazing achievements and you're brilliant at what you do. So how does someone like you even get better?
Humility. We often say to get to mastery, it's humility, right? People who are very good at what they do don't stop practicing. And so I'm very hard on myself. I find my partner is always saying to me, you're so harsh on yourself. You're such a critic of yourself. And it's true, because I'm always saying, how could I have done this better? So, I could have given a workshop a dozen times. The night before the workshop, you'll always see me sitting there, what could I change? What could I tweak? What could I do differently? Because, the last time I was at the workshop, somebody said this, and perhaps I could add this to it or subtract this. So I think it's humility. It's always understanding that there's always so much more to learn. I've learned that failure is important. When you come from our kind of education system that said, the thing is to be number one at all times, and the thing is to, when you put up your hand, it's because you must have the right answer. I've learned the power of asking questions. I've learned just the power of asking generally, because I'm also not good at asking for help, for example. And I think drawing on networks, asking for help, asking a question has also allowed me to continue to improve myself. Being open to other human beings and what they can bring into my life.
Yeah, because again, coming back to your talking about passion and gifts, is that everyone has their own passions and gifts that we can all benefit from. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, amazing. So just lastly, to round up then, what is the kind of last point that you'd like to leave with everybody today?
So it's what I said earlier. I hinted towards this, or spoke actually about it quite extensively, is the standard. It's so important that you set what your standard is, what your high bar is, and you stick to it. Because there's so much that's going to happen around you. There's so much funk that can happen around you from other human beings, from systems around you, from the economy. I mean, the world, not just Zimbabwe, the world is in a tough space at the moment in terms of the economy. And there's a zeitgeist that's happening. There's a shift that wants to happen in the world. And so it's so important that we set a standard. You need to have an internal motivator for what it is that you're doing, what you're doing. And you need to stick to that. Because that's what will allow you to keep your head above water, regardless of what the circumstances are.
I think that's such a brilliant point to leave with, because I think it's so easy, like you say, especially in this country, just to settle for less and just to brush it under the carpet and say it's okay. And I think I've probably also fell into that now that I'm in Zim. I'm like, oh, the internet's down, or the power cut, or it's rubbish on the street. But actually, why should we settle for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so. Thank you for that. A little bit of inspiration for me too.
Absolute pleasure. Like I said, I'm going around the country giving people speeches, but they're not always happy to hear, but it's important.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you don't want to hear what you need to hear.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on Happiness Show and for sharing your inspiration and hearing all about your passion, your purpose, and how you find happiness in the world.
Thank you.
It was really, really lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And I'm sure everybody took away some wisdom and some inspiration and knowledge from Rachel today. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you'd like to get hold of Rachel for leadership coaching or corporate leadership coaching, please get in touch with her at www.nyaracholeadership.com, and she'll be able to get hold of you. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you again, Rachel. And thank you for watching the Happiness Show, which is all about passion, purpose, and happiness in your lives and the lives of others. Have a great day, guys. Bye.